Sophia and I are talking about David's experience with stroke today. We've made 2 vlogs already where David's been the main focus of the vlogs, so.
Yeah, it's been 7 months since David had his stroke, and he's progressed quite well since then. It's an extremely slow process, and I think David's first analysis of 2 weeks was a little bit...
And we thought we'd come up to Black Mountain in Canberra. We've left David at home in the flat.
Yeah.
But we thought it'd be a great backdrop to have a discussion about your experience.
Sure.
As David's wife, and what it's been like being on this journey with David after the stroke back in November. We've made a couple of movies of David and talking about his stroke journey.
Yes.
And as I understand it, it happened in New Zealand in December 2016, and you were with him, were you?
I was. It was in November.
November.
And we were transiting through New Zealand. We'd been on a little 5-day holiday in Fiji, and we're coming through New Zealand. We had a 2-hour stopover, and we just went up to the Qantas Club to have a bit of lunch, which we did. And David said, I think I feel like a glass of wine, and went to get up and then just fell back in the chair. And I said to him, what happened? And he said, I can't feel the right hand side of my body. Well, what do you mean? I started poking him and, can you feel this? Can you feel this? And no. And I thought stroke, and I asked him to put his hands above his head, the fast thing, which I've sort of become familiar with. It's stuck on my fridge, where you ask them to put their hands up in the air, have a look at their face. I had a look at his face, it hadn't dropped. He could put his arms up in the air, he could talk. I asked him his name, his age. He answered all those questions. So I was a bit sort of perplexed in what's going on. And then David said, I think I might have just pinched a nerve sitting in the plane on the flight from New Zealand. Go off and do your shopping and whatever. And I thought, no, something's very wrong here. So I got up and went to the front desk and asked them to call an ambulance.
And what were you thinking during this process in Qantas Club as the medicos arrived and were doing these tests?
I wasn't panicking, which I found surprising. It seemed like everything was in sort of slow motion. I sort of felt, okay, well, this is happening. What do we do now? Where are we going to go with this? Not really knowing a lot. At that stage, I didn't know that David had had a brain bleed, which his stroke was a brain bleed. Because one of the things they say, if you get to hospital within the first 4 hours, you've got a better chance and all that sort of thing, which is true. And we certainly were at the hospital within 2 hours, probably at the most, because I also had to get through customs. So we had to get our bags taken off the plane, and customs had to come up to the Qantas Club and all that sort of stuff that you don't normally go through. So that was a process in itself. So I think the pragmatic side of things was going through my head more than anything. Here we are in New Zealand. Where am I going to go? What am I going to do? I've got no money. I've got no phone that works here. I've got nothing. I'm just here with David. So that was...
Obviously no friends and family.
No. So that was a bit scary in a way. But you just have to... You just get on with it, really.
So you went to a hospital in Auckland?
Yeah, we went to Middlemore Hospital, which was the closest hospital. And luckily for us, a fantastic stroke unit. The doctor they did a CT scan of his brain right there and then. And then the doctor came out and said, I think you better call your family because your husband's had a medium to large brain bleed and we don't know if he's going to make it.
So when you got this news, and particularly the words that struck me there was, we don't know whether your husband's going to make it. What did you think?
wondered the same thing. I thought, bloody hell, here I am, what are we going to do? And my first thoughts were, I need to ring David's family. Again, as I said, I had no phone, I had no money. But the doctor there, who was a lovely guy, handed me his phone and he said, just ring whoever you want, it doesn't matter. So I rang David's son and said, your dad's had a brain bleed, we're in New Zealand, don't know what's going to happen, can you tell the rest of the family? And that's what I did. And I spoke to his son Chris and told him what had happened. And he arranged to come over to New Zealand fairly well the next day, which was fantastic.
And I suppose hour upon hour things changed?
Yeah, he got worse.
Different news came?
David got worse as time went on. He got worse. He started speaking gobbledygook. He didn't know where he was. Like initially he was fine. He was saying, I'm okay, blah, blah, blah. But as time progressed and certainly going into the evening, he became more incoherent. He couldn't get his words out. He was looking more and more confused. Didn't know what was going on. Didn't know where he was. So that was frightening because he was getting worse. Yeah.
Were you thinking in stark terms of life and death?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I didn't know whether I'd ever take him home alive. And that's what the doctor had said. They were very clear in what could happen.
So, how long were you in New Zealand nursing David or being with David in New Zealand, Soph?
We were in New Zealand for about 2.5 weeks, and that was really just to get him stable enough to fly him home. The journey from New Zealand back to Canberra was horrendous. By that stage, Chris had gone back to Australia and Penny had come over, David's daughter Penny, and so then we learnt the way to get him in and out of a chair. But coming back to Australia, we were told by Qantas that we had to book first class tickets, so we did that. Unfortunately, when we got on the plane, it was one of the old planes, because one of the things that they'd said to us was that he had to lie back, he couldn't sit up, and he hadn't sat up the whole few weeks that we were in New Zealand. He wasn't well enough to sit up. But once we got on the plane, which was an effort in itself, we found that the seats didn't go back like we thought business class seats would go back. They went back about 2 inches, which meant David was sitting up the whole time flying back to Australia, and that's the time where David thought he was going to die. And I thought he was too.
He would die on the plane?
He would die on the plane. I didn't think he would make it. And he says afterwards, in hindsight, he actually wanted to die. He just felt so wretched and so uncomfortable, and he's told me that if he'd died there, it would have been okay. He felt that it was okay.
And the prospect of having your husband die on a plane next to you, that obviously crossed your mind.
Yeah, I was in tears, and Penny was sitting opposite us, and she was looking at me and I was looking at her. I don't think she quite realised how bad David was, but I certainly felt it. The prospect was scary. But again, what do? You're stuck there. You can't jump off. There's nowhere to go. You've just got to keep going. One of the things that I hadn't known about stroke was just how exhausting physically it actually is. So the slightest thing, having lunch is enough, an hour's sleep, in the early days after he'd eaten. the amount of concentration it takes to get his hand to pick up a spoon and put it in a bowl and then actually get it to his mouth. All the stuff that we take for granted. David and I have been together now for 14 years, and from where we were, where he was very active, to now, it's been a huge change. And I think all people who are caring for someone will understand that. It's hard. I think the hardest thing was coming home was scary. I was really scared to bring him home. I didn't know whether I was capable of looking after him. Not mentally. I knew mentally I was. It was physically that scared me. What if he fell over? How could I get him up? What if he choked on his food? How could I help him? And I think one of the other things that I found hard was just having to leave. You've got to go and do shopping. You've got to have a life. A carer has to have a life. You can't just be there for him 24/7. There's things that have to be done. You have to get food in the house. You've got to maintain friendships, relationships. And the scariest thing for me was opening that front door coming home. I didn't know whether he'd still be there or not. And I still have that fear. When I walk in the door, the first thing he does is sing out, "Hello," and I go, "Oh, hello, you're still alive?" "Yep, still here." "Okay, good." Okay. Oh, look, you just have to have a sense of humour, and, very fortunate that David's got a very active sense of humour, and I knew that he was one of the things that I felt that it's David's back was when he'd start cracking jokes, and David keeps telling everyone around our neighbourhood where we live, that he was learning to do the crip dance or something, because he had one leg that used to pop out and one arm that used to pop up, and some people just didn't know how to take it, and they'd sort of look at him and say, "He's joking, it's okay, we're allowed to laugh." You've got to laugh about these things.
But I think my way of handling everything is to probably be more light-hearted than anyone I know.
Have you ever, you've said you felt fear. Did you ever feel angry?
I felt sad. And I feel sad still. I have this overwhelming sadness when I see David, and I think that's just bloody sad. There's a good bloke who's always helping other people and, doing the right thing, and it's just sad to see him suffering, and so I feel sadness, I think, is my biggest emotion. So with our friends, I think David and I are both very fortunate, and I think David's the sort of person that actually has got a lot of male friends, which is good, and they've been fabulous for me and fabulous for him. Just popping in, having a conversation with him for an hour, taking him for a walk when he was in a wheelchair, taking him out for a little walk in the sunshine. Things like that just make a hell of a lot of difference to him and to me, to give me a bit of a break, and also him, and also my friends being so supportive, and that's what you need at that point in time. And family as well, because once the stroke happened, I was always running around with the grandkids, for the grandkids, whatever, and then that sort of stopped abruptly, and I felt quite guilty that I couldn't spend time with the kids, and I missed spending time with the kids. But it's slowly coming back, I'm slowly doing a little bit more and spending a little bit more time with them, which is nice.
So not only has David's life changed in the last 8-7 months, your life's changed a lot.
Oh yeah, our lives have totally changed. It's that split second thing that people talk about. Your life can change in a second. Well, I guess our lives did. I mean, we were travelling, David was working, probably, full time. Life went on. I did my thing. David went to work and did his thing. He travelled to Brisbane, Melbourne, Sydney for work, and then all of a sudden that all stopped. And I think the hardest thing for me was watching him coming to the realisation that that had stopped. You know, he kept saying, I'm just being a burden to you now, and things like that, which is hard. But, you know...
Hard for who and in what way?
Well, hard for him coming to that realisation that his life's never going to be the same. You know, it could take years for him to recover fully, or he might not recover at all. Not being able to drive anymore. We're not even sure what's going to happen tomorrow, let alone, you know, what we're planning on anything. That's and of course my life's changed dramatically. I was just always, you know, I'm always very active, get up and go, and then all of a sudden I'm not getting up and going anywhere. I'm staying with David. I'd hate to have to look after someone that I didn't really love. I think that would be really hard. But, you know, I think for both of us we realise that looking after someone you love isn't really a big chore. You know, it's just, that's life. It's part of what you do, you know, and it's not an issue. You just get on with it. It's just a different life now.